Why female athletes should be paid the same as men. The specific purpose of my speech today is to persuade you guys on why I personally believe that women deserve the same pay grade as men. So male and female athletes put in the same amount of work, but for some reason, female athletes receive a significantly smaller pay grade than men. So oftentimes the schedule of a professional athlete consists of about 4 hours of practice, cardio, technical drills, weightlifting, and more. So this is also up to 6 days a week, and this is something that both male and female athletes do. So my question to you is that if you were putting in the same amount of work every day, male or female, you would expect the same pay grade, right? That's what most professional athletes think. But oftentimes, women are shorted of that opportunity. So if your answer is no, I really hope to change your mind throughout this paper and to prove to you why women deserve the same as men. The world of athletes is a melting pot, and in that melting pot, we cannot discriminate just because of someone's gender. So all my life, I've also been an athlete. But more recently, looking into college athletes, there's been a lot of talk about whether college athletes should be paid or not. Obviously, that's a completely different topic, but you can see how it relates to me in my life, and you can also see how the topic for pay throughout athletes across the board has been a big conversation. So unfair pay has been a nationwide problem for years, but heading into 2019, I believe this is a problem that we need to fix now. So unfair pay for pro athletes in sports has been all across the board, from the WNBA to even participating in the Olympics. In 2015, the average salary for an NBA player was about $4.5 million. But when we take a look at the WNBA, the average salary for a female was only $72,000. The highest paid female in the WNBA was at $107,000, while the highest male athlete came in at $23.5 million. Obviously, you can see that there is a huge difference there. Tennis is also one of the only female sports where, on average, women make more than men. But don't let it fool you, because the top female athletes still make 54% less than the men. Another big example that has been a topic of controversy in these past few years has been the women's national soccer team. The women's national soccer team has placed 6 times in the World Cup since 1991, compared to the guys who have only placed 1 time since 1930. So obviously you can see that the women's national team has been one of the most successful teams across the board, but when the women's team won the World Cup in 2015, their pay was only $2.5 million in prize money. But in the same year, when the Germany men's soccer team won the World Cup, they took home $35 million for winning. The U.S. men's team placed 11th, and they still took home $9 million. So the idea of women being shot down at a chance for pay is like a cold gust of wind piercing their bodies. It's extremely unfair that women are receiving such less pay than men, and there's really no example for it. Oftentimes in the World Cup, in different tournaments, they offer prize money, and it's just recently come into effect that the prize money that they offer is also available for women. So this is just one small step into fixing the whole issue. The women's national soccer team also has taken up in going against the board to fight for equal pay, and the response from the board was that they were disappointed in the women's actions. I don't really see how they can be disappointed there, because the actions that the women take were all very reasonable. Soccer is one of the only sports also that doesn't offer equal prize money. 25 out of the 35 sports have agreed to paying equal. Keep this in mind though, that excludes the athletes' actual salaries. And looking at tennis again, Serena Williams is the only pro athlete that is a female to place in the top 100 paid athletes. That's 99 men in all sports across the board that pay higher than women. So now you can see in the numbers just how crucial it is that we fight for equal pay for women. Now I'm going to look into a little more of the scientific side of things. Oftentimes people like to argue that women's bodies aren't up to the same standards as men, so why do they deserve the same pay? So saying a female athlete is lesser than a male is like saying a pig can fly. In sports that use most of the upper body, women's bodies often tend to be less strong just because of development and shoulder issues. So that requires women to use 80 to 90% of their body compared to males who use only about 60%. Males are also born with bigger hearts, which means that when competing in events like running, women have to use almost 100% of their heart's potential, while men only have to use about 80 to 90%. One of the only exceptions in body differences would be long distance swimming, because women have a little bit better buoyancy than men. So that means that men have an easier time and respond better to weights and conditioning, which also makes it easier for them in postseason, preseason to get in better shape. Women are as fit as a fiddle, but still struggle for equal treatment. So bringing that all back together, that means that women have to exert more energy and put in more time and effort to get the same results as men. So what does that mean? That men are getting paid for doing less work than women? So next I'm going to look into the women's national hockey team. The women's national hockey team is one of the teams that's recently taken action to receive the fair pay they deserve. The women's national hockey team wanted better publicity, they wanted better pay, and they also just wanted better programs for younger children. The women's national hockey team threatened to boycott their championship game. Opportunity knocked on their door, and they couldn't turn down the chance to finally make a change. The women's boycott was successful, and they received a $2,000 training stipend, performance bonuses, and a lot more. The boycott set standards for the future of all women, so we can see that just because of their little actions, they've set the standards so high for everyone else to take action for what they deserve. This also related to Billie Jean King's boycott in 1973. A big part of the women's boycott was that the men also stood with them. The men's national team also was going to sit out of their game to prove a point for the women. If there's any chance of ever winning this battle of equal pay, men have to and need to be willing to help us out. The women also received support from the NHL, the MLB, the NFL, and the NBA. So even though we have all of this positive evidence into why females deserve the same pay as men, not much has been done. Oftentimes, empty arguments and failed excuses are what are presented when women speak up. Since 1973, when no sports rewarded prize money equally, now 35 out of 44 sports are paying prize money equally. But we have to remember that this is such a small portion of the fight. The fight for women's equality has been long and fought hard, but this is really not where the fight ends. Women everywhere deserve so much more. They deserve the same level of respect, praise, and pay as men. These women dedicate their lives to mastering their craft, so why are we so hesitant to give them what they deserve? This fight obviously doesn't stop where sports is. Women have been fighting to get equal pay for years now. First it started with voting, it started with women not having to be housewives anymore, and now it's down to pay. Women all over the world work just as hard as men do, and this is just one small reason why they deserve to be treated equally. As Jenny Finch once said, "Never limit yourself, never be satisfied, and smile. It's free." We may be fighting right now, but one day women will prevail. We will lead, and we will all change the world, and this is just one little step into how we can.